Good evening, everyone. Welcome to episode 223 of The Ball is Round. My name is Andy Coronado, and tonight on the show, we're discussing CF Montreal's tie versus Orlando, Rose's FC win over AFC Toronto, amongst other things. As you guys can see, I'm joined by Elias, who is going to pop out in a second. What's going on, my man?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. Roses won, Barcelona won, CF Montreal. We don't talk about that. And yeah,
Did you not get the memo, man? This is the show about CF Montreal.
oh,
Let's
I forgot about that.
Hey man, guys, thank you. Those of you that are joining us today. Thank you so much for joining us on the Tuesday night. I know we usually do this on Sunday night, but Elias, we had, I don't know about you, man, but I had a hell of a weekend, man. And when I say a hell of a weekend, I don't mean necessarily like super fun weekend. I mean, there was a lot of events, a lot of things, a lot of family suppers, mass here and there, left and right. But and Elias, there were a lot of sporting events too. There were soccer
So
games,
much.
There were, we talk about CF Montreal, we talk about Rose FC, but dude, there was like Habs. There was, there were the basketball
Habs in
playoffs.
late April? What? What?
You know what I'm saying? Like it's
Get
just
out of here.
like there's just so much going on right now, and it's just like it's an overload of breaking news left and right. The NFL
Hell
is
yeah.
is the off season, and they're having breaking news left and right as well. So just a lot going on, man. I know
Absolutely. I love it.
we tend to live in our little world, sometimes stuck watching CF Montreal and Rose FC and Canada men's and women's national soccer team, but there's a lot going on, man. I'm
There's
I'm
always something going
I'm mentally drained of all the information going on around, but super fun. What'd you do? How's your weekend?
on. I was great, man. Like you said, right? CF Montreal, Roses, Habs playoffs. Grand Prix, WrestleMania. There was also Easter, by the way. But
Oh,
all the sporting
yeah.
stuff. But Easter on the side. Hope everyone had a wonderful Easter.
Heck
Had
yeah.
a good time with family and friends and whatnot. Um, but yeah, we're here.
That's what
We're
matters,
here,
man.
and we're gonna talk about it, rain or shine, right?
We're gonna be here. We're gonna give the people the show. The show must go on, as they say, right?
Absolutely.
But thank you guys so much for joining us. LP Has fan is joining us. He says, "Evening, gents. I'm here to bring the positivity after the amazing performance for the weekend. From the weekend, it's just what we need." LP Has fan, because we are bringing the positivity today, aren't we? So speaking of
That
positive,
you
let's
said very positively too, Andy. We're bringing the positivity
We're
today.
so
Oh my god.
excited to talk about this today. So, well, let's go ahead and talk about positive stuff. Let's go ahead and talk about CF Montreal's tie versus Orlando SC over the weekend. A game that ended in a tie that, to me, Elias, felt like a loss. Uh, that down 10 men, Orlando down 10 men. You're playing at home. You had what, 20? I think that happened at the 80th minute. I forgot what time. At what minute?
76th, if I'm not
What
mistaken.
else?
But yeah,
That feels like, I don't know about you, man. That feels like a loss to me. That felt like a loss, and it's just I'm finding
you're not
it
wrong.
hard to find the right words to describe this.
Insanity.
Other than
Insanity. Einstein defined insanity as doing the same thing over and over again and
yeah,
expecting a different result. How else can you describe it other than just that, right? And that's the thing, right? There's not a whole lot to talk about that's going to be different from last week.
mm,
In maybe in a broad sense, there's definitely different details that I think are really important to talk about, and we will be talking about it. But when you look at the overall game story, you know, how different is it from the game against Charlotte?
I mean, the score, the score, but what came out of the game, pretty much the same thing.
Same thing.
Another
Same.
disappointment in results, another underwhelming performance from him and this guy and this person and this, it's the same answers to every question, and it's just one of those things where, like you said, it's insanity where we keep seeing the same patterns be repeated. And it's not just that, Elias. When you hear the press conference, you hear what the players have to say, what the coaches have to say. Elias, they keep mentioning. I said it yesterday in my blog. I said it seems like a theme of the week. Like we just need some luck. We need some luck to go our way. We need a little extra bounce. We need and it's like I get it. You do. I think everybody needs some luck. LAFC needs some luck. San Jose needs. Everybody needs luck. Yes, but I mean, can you can you coach luck? Can you teach luck? Can you like? At what point does it become like, okay, I'm not going to rely on anything. I'm only going to rely on the factors that are in my control, and I'm going to make a difference about it. And that's just
Yeah.
like what I feel we're at now. Where the CF Montreal is simply saying, well, look, we're doing everything we can. We're taking it step by step, but we don't have luck on our side. I mean, I think at that point in life, you're almost talking like a fan. You're not even talking as a coach or a player anymore. You're just saying, we hope we get lucky this time.
No,
What?
that's a really good point because you are expected to come up with concrete solutions. You know, uh, this game was incredibly similar to the game against Charlotte. In fact, like look at the stats and the momentum against Charlotte, and then you look at the stats and momentum against uh who was it last week? Oh my god, against Orlando. Sorry.
Orlando Cheese.
It's the same thing. It's a copy paste the same thing. And here's where the problem is, and it lies in what Marco Donadel said after the game. Specifically, he said that he doesn't think the problem lies in the dressing room. Like he said, right, a bounce here, a bounce there. But tactically, he can't change anything because when you look at those stats, purely based on numbers, Montreal was the better team in
Yeah.
almost every facet of the game. Montreal was better. They had better possession. They had more chances. They had better chances. They had more shots. They had more possession. All these different factors, right? So when you've coached that comprehensively dominant of a game as the manager, how are you supposed to go, I have to change something now? Because by every metric, you've done your job. Right? By every single footballing metric except the final score, Marco Donadel, who again, remember, the coaches don't have control over the final score. They have control over every other statistical thing because how you line up the team and your game plan, they don't have control of the final score. The players on the field do. And therein lies the real problem, right? He set up his team perfectly to win the game. And then at the end of the day, it's the final thing. That you can't coach. That you either have it or you don't. And
Yeah.
right now, CF Montreal do not have it.
Very, very well said. So let's go ahead and look at the lineup just to start because I know we're getting ahead of ourselves. So let's go ahead and look at the weekend's lineup. At goalie, we had Josie Roy. At right back, finally, the right back, we had a natural David Bugay, George Campbell, Joel Waterman as center backs, Luca Petrasso on the left back, Samuel Piet, and Nathan Saliba on midfield. Right on the right side, we had Hennady Sinchuk, Bryce Duke, our boy Bryce Duke as a number 10. And on the left side, we have Dante Seeley and Prince Owosu as a number 9. You look at this because last week we talked about this, Elias. We said, there's a lot of experimenting going. What the heck? What the hell is Joel Waterman doing as a right back? Victor Latour as a left wing. This lineup, as we're seeing it right now,
Yep.
when you see that at 6:30, when it comes out for everybody to see, you're thinking, oh, they figured out the natural part of things. Like, just this guy is a winger, put him on the winger. This guy's a right back, put him as a right back. That's the way I perceived it when I saw that lineup. Everybody was naturally lined up. There were no experiments done
Yeah.
on paper, right? What was your
Even
reaction when you saw
even
that?
in practice, really, right? Nobody was doing any kind of weird stuff that we've never seen before. This was the first time since the game against Chicago where I saw a lineup and I didn't have to guess where people were going to play. It was the first time. And so that's refreshing because it means that people aren't playing out of position, people playing in natural positions. And my first reaction was, "Oh my god, it makes sense." That was my I swear to God, that was the first thing I thought of was, "Oh my god, nobody's playing out of position right now." So, look, again, it kind of boils down to what we were talking about earlier. Marco Donadel is setting up the team right. He's doing everything you could ask of a coach. That final 3% needed to win the game, that's on the players.
Yeah. Exactly. And beyond what we're seeing on the field, Elias, there's also a lot of stuff going on outside the field. And when I talk about outside the field, I talk about the bench and those that are not on the game sheet. We had Giacomo Brioni once again and Jalen Neal both once again out because of injury. When I'm starting to see this, and when this is announced on Friday morning, it was announced. There are questions to be asked now because Giacomo Brioni played a good, I want to say 25 minutes against Charlotte.
Yeah.
And then Jalen Neal played, 10 minutes? And now we're back to square one where they're injured. Something is going on, and it doesn't make any sense to me. And it's worrisome in the sense because it reality is Giacomo Brioni is a DP. He is. And Jalen Neal, well, he was also an expensive center back with a big potential, supposedly. What do you think about these injuries? Like, does that make sense to you? Is it precautionary? What would you say about what you're seeing there?
It's again, they were very open about how Giacomo Brioni got hurt. He got hurt in training, and then he tried to tough it out for the game against Charlotte. He played 22 minutes, and then in the build up to the game on Saturday, he kept on trying to get rid of the pain and work through it, and it just wasn't happening. So they said, "Okay, fine, we'll take the week off." They've been very coy about the depth of both of those injuries. They've been very coy about whether or not those injuries are the same thing, right? They mentioned that for Jalen Neal, it was his pectoral muscle that was the source. Marco Dondell said it in the presser, right? But they don't really talk about how problematic these injuries really are. If they're going to miss again next week, if they're going to miss the week after that, because at some point, you look at this team, we're talking about the fact that, it's not good enough. If Giacomo Brioni is healthy and has played even half the games this season, they've got at least 2 or 3 wins this year. At least. So, and a couple, or if not those wins, some of those losses become draws, right? The game against Charlotte, they win that. The game against Orlando, they win that. The game against Atlanta, that I don't think they lose that game, right? But this is all entirely hypothetical. I think that right now, if this is a serious long-term injury and the window closes in a day and a half, you are in serious trouble. That by the time the window opens again in the summer, your season's done.
And you're absolutely right. These players are crucial. What I found really odd, Elias, is that Jalen Neal actually gave a press conference on Wednesday, right? On Wednesday before the game. And I don't know if it was you or maybe somebody else that asked him, how do you feel after a month of training in your first minutes? Like, are you fully healthy? The question was asked, are you fully healthy? And he said, yes, I'm fully healthy. I feel great. I think I've been fully healthy for at least a month now. I haven't been managed to train lately, and I'm feeling really good. So you hear that, Elias, and you're like, dude, this guy's back. He is back.
2 days later, he's out.
And that's where I'm like, that's my question. Like, I literally am reading exactly what was transcribed for that answer. And then he's out 2 days later. And you're just starting to ask questions because now he says, I'm not being managed. So is it that the practices are too hard? Is it that they're training way too hard? Is it just an unlucky streak of injuries? Because it can happen. That's sports. That's just unfortunately, we'll call it the Lassi Lapalainen situations, right? Where they just unfortunately gets injured in warmups. Like it's things like that. It can happen. But at this point, it becomes a little concerning because his words are saying, I've been feeling healthy 100% for like a month now. But they only gave him minutes a month later. We take it by word.
So that's an athlete just saying they're ready to go. An athlete saying they're ready to go and a physio or a doctor saying they're ready to go are two different things, right? Yeah. Every athlete has been, I'm ready to go, but they really aren't, right? Because they kind of want to get back into competitive nature. So I'm not surprised that he said he's been ready for a while now, but I don't think he was, because again, they're not going to rush someone back when they're only ready to play 20 minutes. They're going to rush them back when they're ready to play 100 and they play 20 minutes as a precaution. Yeah. So I You got to take that with a bit of a grain of salt.
All right, maybe I'm ignorant a little bit in believing everything they say. You're absolutely right. That's
They're
just the
all
way I've always
liars.
been.
No.
Like I don't trust you anymore. What you say, but no, it's you're absolutely right. And I just want to hit on something last thing before we actually get into the actual game, because I did talk about the injured players, right? And you're
Mhm.
absolutely right, Elias. I do think Vioni does bring like the little we saw, man. I was complete, and I've seen him in practice too. Dude just seems to know what he's doing with his body,
Yeah.
knows where he's placing himself. He's no, if anybody out there is expecting him to be a Joseph Martinez, I don't believe he is a Joseph Martinez, because he is, I believe, an excellent striker. But Joseph Martinez understood the spaces, understood where to place himself. He understood what he had to do to help others, including Caden Clark, around him. That's how it felt when you watched him play, as opposed to Vrioni. Even though I don't think he's much of a explore the spaces or really from based on what I saw, he seems to really be like, give me the ball, I'll figure this out. You guys around
Yeah.
me do your thing. I got
He's a
this.
conventional in the box finishing striker. That's what he
Exactly.
does, right? No nonsense. Put the ball in the back of the net. I
Exactly. And
can't
that
think of anything CF Montreal needs more right now than someone that's just going to put the ball in the back of the net and not ask questions.
100%. And we're gonna get into that finishing touches of our forwards. That it's
Yeah.
going fantastic. Um, but yeah, let's talk about some of the players that weren't selected. We had JMR that was an unused sub. He was on the
Mhm.
bench. We had Mahalo Poku that last week was a bench in the bench, and now he was out of the game sheet. Dominic Yankov, again, he seems to always be playing the Joker in practice, but has no time either in the bench or, well, he's had a few minutes off the bench, but beyond that, he's a healthy scratch. We can also talk about Julien Timmy the same, but Elias, honestly, at this point, I'm just ready to say that he's injured and it's not being reported unless I'm crazy. But what do you think of this, man? Because these are stories that to me are starting to build up, especially where as of today, I think it's tomorrow or the 24th that the transfer window
The
closes for the
24th, I
MLS.
think it was.
Sorry.
It's the 24th. Was the
Yeah.
last
So
day.
in 2 days, you're doing these healthy scratches. What do you think? What do you think when you see these things? Do you think it's over for them? Do you think it's something maybe we're not seeing? What's your thoughts on it?
I don't necessarily think it's over. I think what's going on right now is that these were people brought in for a specific system. And it is a radical change of system that's happening right now. This is not just like, Michael Darnell comes in and tweaks a few things. This is almost the polar opposite, where you have not just
Transition
La
year?
Haute system. I hate that word.
Kill me. I know.
I hate that term.
I know.
But you have the 3-4-3, 5-3-2, whatever you want to call it. You have the three back, right? And then it's variations. You have that system, and then you also have what Marco Del is using, which is again completely opposite. You have wingers. You have a 10, 1-10. You have one striker. You have a four back. A lot of these players are brought in with the idea that they're going to be playing in a three or a five back. Someone like Jaquil Marsh-Rudy was not, even though he is a winger by trade and converted into a wing back in Toronto, he was brought in to be a wing back. He's not a right back, and right now, I don't think he's shown anything that says he'd be a reliable winger. So I understand why they kind of being left out of the squad right now. Someone like Dominic Yankov can operate as a lone 10, but right now he has a very similar profile to Bryce Duke, except Bryce Duke has more game experience and is somehow even more physically advanced than Dominic Yankov. Because you look at Dominic Yankov when he comes on as a substitute, physically speaking, he's not imposing himself. And at least Bryce Duke is combining with people to continue the play. I mean, he's not doing everything else, but he's doing something. Dominic
Yeah.
Yankov, he has this very good execution, but he never uses it. So there's players like this that fit into a system and then they show up and then the system is gone. And now they're kind of left out in the cold. So either they're going to have to, again, reinvent themselves or they're going to be stuck in limbo for a while.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it feels right now. It just feels like you have a group of players that are not playing in their natural position and are not don't who were brought in by previous regimes with a previous, way of philosophy of play that is just confusing, because yes, you're playing a lot of Dante Sealy because he's a natural winger. That's just the truth. He is a natural winger, at least closer. I'll say this: he's closer to a natural winger than most players in that squad. That's why you're playing. Because if Dante Sealy gets injured or Dante Sealy, I don't know, can't play, you have a three, he's played 20 games in a row. Who is a natural left winger in the team? Or who is a natural right winger beside Hennady Sinchuk, who we saw on Saturday, and we'll talk about him, and Dante Sealy? Who do you have? You have Mahalo Poku, but has he seen the field? No, we're talking about him being on the bench, not even on the game sheet. Do we have any natural wingers? Or have they all been brought in as maybe wing backs, maybe fullbacks? So
that's the thing, right? And this, like, I mean, LP Habstan has a good point, right? It's interesting you say that because one of the biggest criticisms for the Uncle was constantly trying to force guys into the wrong positions due to formation he was playing. That's because they're picking too many guys that kind of check a lot of boxes. Where you have someone like Caden Clark that can play on the wing and also as a false nine and also as a 10. You have Bryce who plays an 8, and you're not actually targeting players for specific roles. Right? You have Jaquil Marshall-Rudy, who is a winger, but also a wingback, but also neither. You have David Bugai, who can play a center back and as right back, but your bank can play right wing back. I mean, again, his game last on Saturday was good because he's in his natural position. But these people that are now in more natural positions, people like, Caden Clark, people like Bryce Duke, yeah, they're in more natural positions, but they were not brought in to do specifically what is needed. Right? The only person on the field right now that looked to be, at least in the attack, that looked to be in their actual element was Hennady Sinchuk.
absolutely.
Everyone else looked like they were just trying to cope with a new system, which is, it's frustrating to watch.
Elias, everybody else. I mean, we're not talking about the midfielders. We're not talking about the center backs. We're talking about everybody else seemed, okay, we're learning a new system again, and it's just as fatigued as we are of seeing it, Elias. I'm sure that they are fatigued of, like, tired of seeing that. But yeah, I mean, some of these players that we talked about, like Mahalo Poku, Dominic Yankov, these are healthy scratch, and they should technically be in the lineup, but they haven't shown enough. And it might be a very personal thing to them mentally. Maybe they've quit. Are you ready to say that they've quit on the team, Elias? Would you say that?
Because we're not at training every day. We're not in the locker room every day. We're not in the gym. We don't know what their state of mind is right now. All we can say is what we see in the few training sessions a week that we attend and what we see in the game. And that's too small a sample size to really assess where their head is at.
Mm-hmm.
But all we can say is the few times we do see them on the field, it's not enough.
Yeah.
It's just because, again, remember, when you come off as a sub, you're basically auditioning to be a starter. Right? You're also brought in because you're specifically important for the situation or whatever. But you, as an individual player who's looking for more minutes, this is your audition. And simply put, nobody that I see come on the field, and this has been weeks now, right? Except maybe Caden Clark on Saturday. Nobody that has come on the field in the last 2 or 3 games has maybe sit back and go, "Whoa, they should be starting. Like, hands down, you have to start this guy."
Yeah, I do. I know one guy, George Campbell. That's it.
But George Campbell doesn't come on as a sub.
Oh, okay. See, I got you.
No one who's come on as a sub has genuinely said, if this guy isn't starting next game, then they're cooked.
Yeah.
Nobody.
And I used to say that about Sunusi Ibrahim, and he's honestly disappointed this season. So,
he
but
looks out of shape too.
He looks terribly out of shape. He looks out of everything right now. So let's talk about a few things here. So in the game, we also saw. Was there any phase of the game in particular that surprised you, be it in a good way or a bad way? Was there anything that surprised you? Was maybe the
Not
offense?
surprised me, but what was encouraging was, again, the build out from the back. On Saturday and the week before that, they've shown that the improvements that they've made. They said that they would make, both defensively and when building out of the back, 100% noticeable. I think they're becoming much more efficient. I think they're becoming much more comfortable in possession. And so that phase of the game, when building out from a goal kick or winning possession back in defense, that has improved significantly. And remember, this was it's not the worst team because San Jose existed last year, but this is the second worst defensive team in MLS last year. And you've gone to a point this season, even after the switch to the 4-back, where they're not only defending well, but they are handling the most dangerous threats of the opposition. Right? Pep Biel gets a goal because of a mistake. Fine. But you can point that being like they didn't handle Pep Biel. When you look at the entirety of the game, Pep Biel didn't do a whole lot.
Yeah.
Right? When you look at the entirety of the game, Luis Muriel was, except for the chance that George Campbell gave him on a platter and then took away from him, nothing. Right? Hugo Kuipers, nothing. Columbus, the first half in Columbus was a bit of an outlier, but the second half was again nothing. So defensively speaking, I'm very impressed with the steps they've taken. The problem is, it seems like they've done that. It seems like they've sold their soul to get all the defense improvements, and they said, take all the offense, and that's not a good trade.
I agree. We have Roberto joining us a little late. Thank you, Roberto, for joining us. He says, evening, gents. A little late as I thought it was starting at 7:30. Oops, it's okay, Roberto. We'll let it go this time. I guess
This time,
we were almost late.
I don't know what you're
We
talking
almost
about.
thought it was 7:30.
I don't know. I was there on time. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. All right. All right. So let's go. And I agree with you in that sense. The defensive phase has been stand out, Elias, and it has been impressive. I think it's something we've spoken. We've even highlighted George Campbell on multiple times, his performance and what he does. They definitely look a lot more solid than they used to look under Laurent Courtois or even last year when they were struggling terribly. But the offensive part, it continues to surprise me how poor they almost seem to regress with every week. It doesn't seem to be improving, except for one phase, which is the right side with Henadi Sinchuk. But Henadi Sinchuk is one side, and he's not
Mm-hmm.
the whole offense. I saw Nathan Saliba play a lot lower than I've seen him play, and I saw Samuel Piet get a little bit higher. Yeah, as
Mm-hmm.
usual, they put him lower, almost pretty much next to the center backs. He's pretty much playing a third center back there. But I saw him play a little bit higher, and it just he's admitted himself. He said it himself. It's not something I'm making making up. He is not the most offensive player in the world. He doesn't really understand it. Like, he doesn't. It's just not natural to him. He has to, and that's just something that was noticeable in my honestly, in my opinion. So I do want to say something though, because I don't know why. I've said this in this pod before, Elias, and I know you were maybe like, Handy, I think you're being a little too harsh, but I've said it before that I think maybe Samuel Piet is losing a step in his game, and I think maybe he should come in as a super sub. But is there anyone to replace him? Is Victor Lotori the solution? I don't know, but I would much rather see a Nathan Saliba start in Samuel Piet's position and try somebody else out in that offensive, more higher up field. I like Nathan Saliba's game. What do you think of the whole Samuel Piet? Maybe I'm the crazy one. I know Samuel Piet has done incredible things for this club, and he's an excellent player. But I don't see it this season with him.
Well, I'll never not say that you're crazy. But I think that when you're playing on the road, having someone like Samuel Piet is important because he does the dirty work that is necessary. But when you're at home, it really does depend on your opposition. You have someone like Orlando who's so competent on the counter and who does play for that specifically and who can attack at pace. You need this guy in the middle to kind of batten down the hatches. If you're playing a team like Charlotte, where again, yeah, most teams are going to come to Stade Saputo looking at counter, but Charlotte counter in a very different way from the way Orlando counter. They don't counter at pace. They look for maybe one killer ball and then they kind of look from there, right? Having someone like Samuel Piet against a team like Orlando is important because it gives everyone the freedom to do their own thing. Nathan Saliba, I thought he was excellent on Saturday
Mm-hmm.
because of how much better he's. This is finally something we can, we're finally speaking positively about Nathan Saliba because the last two games, I think he's finally stepped his game up to what the expectations were for a follow-up season on what we saw last year. In the build-up, when building up from the back, he is the most important player on the field. He's more important than Joel Waterman. He's more important than Bryce Duke. He's more important than either winger. He is the one that's A, keeping the build-up alive, and B, finding the decisive pass that can then transition them into going forward.
Yeah.
He's doing all that by himself. And this is the kind of play that has to be the standard for him. Because again, we're talking about logical next steps in your progression. We both agree that he's not ready for Europe yet. But if you do want to get to the point where you are ready for Europe, this part of your game, that ability to single-handedly break the press and help your team build out from the back, is mandatory. It's not just a good thing you could have in your, no, you have to have it. And so the fact that he's doing that in a much better, far more efficiently, I think is so important. I'm so happy to see it. But that only also happens because Samuel Piet is such a good metronome, right? When you're breaking down a low block, he's not much help. But my problem right now is not breaking down the low block. Because again, they've kept the ball, they've dominated possession, they've gotten their chances. So I don't think Samuel Piet or Nathan Saliba have done anything to warrant themselves not to start the next game.
Okay, fair.
Especially when you look at who the replacements are. Because Victor Latouri is doing a good job.
Has Samuel Piet done anything to merit a start to you?
Yeah.
Is he putting up performances like Nathan Saliba is this Saturday?
But that's not his job. You can't ask him to be Nathan Saliba because he's not Nathan Saliba. But at the same time, when you look at who would be the logical replacement for his spot, it's Victor Latouri, who I don't think is at the level yet. Where maybe, yeah, he's got a third, and he definitely won't be a step behind, but he won't have Samuel Piet's sense of positioning. He won't have Samuel Piet's calmness under pressure, and he won't have Samuel Piet's ability to operate as a pivot and be able to switch the ball as efficiently. So if your requirement is only to be able to keep up with the pace, Victor Latouri is your guy. But when you're playing in a double pivot, that's not enough because you're covering so much ground, but you have to cover it intelligently. And when you have 60% of the ball, I don't really care how much ground you cover. You're in the right spot. Samuel Piet is always in the right spot. And he's become able to make up for his lack of pace and that step that he is losing. I'll admit it. He's losing that step, but he's in the right spot. Victor Latouri, we've seen him now. We've gotten a fairly decent sample size. He's out of position and makes up with it with his athleticism. I'd rather the former than the latter.
Okay, I understand where you're coming from, but to me, it just becomes. And we'll get to that a little bit later as to what's next for CF Montreal, because we're talking about in the midst of a transfer window, and you can only cross your fingers that CF Montreal is actually doing something in the offices right now, trying to figure it out, because there needs to be a complement to Nathan Saliba's game. And that's where I'm going with, is Samuel Piet that quality of player that will get CF Montreal to that next step or start winning games? I don't know. As of today, like you said, it's what we have. It's what we can settle for. So I guess I'll agree with you in that. Now let's talk about that Caden Clark benching, because it's hard to say benching, but he started off the bench, and immediately after he came in, Elias, he impacted the game. Like, you literally saw what I think the fans are expecting of Bryce Duke in that position. Just hustle, run, get annoying, pick up fouls, just pass the ball, create something, dude. You're at home, you can take risks. But he started in the bench, and it's just a story that goes back and forth. We're 9 games into the season, Elias, and it's just a back and forth with Caden Clark, where, in the press conferences he says, "Oh yeah, like I can't blame it on the coach. I've learned to accept." But then he starts on the bench. To me, everything is backwards, Elias, in that sense. It's like what he said. We talked about Jalen Neal, what he said in the press conference too. Seems backwards, right? So what do you make of Caden Clark not starting and instead is starting a Bryce Duke?
Caden Clark has not been impressive this year, right? He's getting better and he's finding some more confidence, I'll admit. But like the first 8 games of the season, you can't pinpoint to me a specific performance and say, this is why he should be starting. So I cannot fault Marco Donadel for saying, fuck it, and let's just change things up a little bit, because maybe that will spark something. But that substitute appearance definitely convinced me, because terrible half by Bryce Duke.
Horrible.
He didn't do anything wrong, but he also did not do a single thing right.
Yeah, what did he do?
He made no mistakes, but also you did not affect the play in any way whatsoever. So I mean, there has to be some kind of urgency to the game. And Bryce Duke, when he's feeling himself, and I know it's a bit, but like when he's on, he's on. But the thing is, right now, when you have someone like Caden Clark playing and who's hungry, because that substitute appearance, those 45 minutes were the best I've seen of Caden Clark all season.
Yeah.
And again, the bar is not super high, but that looked more like the Caden Clark that goes, I'm going to take things on myself. I'm going to take a much bigger offensive burden because, again, he was playing out wide at the beginning of this new formation. Obviously, did not look super comfortable for a lot of the games. He was a good soldier. He stuck to his role. He didn't do a whole lot, but he did it well. But now that you have him in the middle with the ball in advanced positions, I think that he has to start there because you've done your experimentation. You've tried him out wide. You've tried him in different spots.
Wing back.
Not working. We're not going to talk about Atlanta. And so then you put him at the 10. He's hungry and he shows you. I think at this point, there's no more experimentation needed. I don't want to see Dominic Yankov. I don't want to see Bryce Duke until you go to the dog days of the season where you're playing, 8 games in a month or something like that.
Yeah, fun.
If you're playing once a week, Caden Clark starts at the 10 every single time if he's fit.
I agree with you.
And he's I mean, I think he's had a fitness problem all season, or for the year that he's been here. So his fitness is obviously impeccable. I mean, he's played under Red Bull, so obviously he's been trained within an inch of his life. And so I think that at this point, you start him every single week. He is the first. Him and George Campbell are the first names on the team sheet. They have to be.
I agree with you, but honestly, I've quit on that Bryce Duke experiment. Just kind of going back to that because he's just, to me, like you said 2 things, Elias. He didn't make any mistakes. Great. So he's playing not to make any mistakes. That's a red flag. That's an issue. You're playing not to make mistakes because when you're playing not to make mistakes, Elias, it's just like when you're working to not make mistakes. That means you're not being free. You're not being yourself. You're just trying not to do wrong. And at the same time, you also said, what else you said? I blanked out. But but in any case, I've given up on the project. He just doesn't seem to be at the level. Oh, you said that it's a bit where we kind of had to wait for the perfect situation for Bryce Duke to shine. Elias, we haven't won a game all season. CF Montreal has had 0 wins all season. We are not in a position to test out, is this Bryce Duke's day? Is this a Bryce Duke good day? So in any case, I could go on the whole pod about how the Bryce Duke situation, but we got to move on. We got other things to talk about. Let's talk about to finish off. I do want to hear your thoughts on Hennady Sinchuk on the right side. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, and he seemed one of the more natural ones in the field in his position. Seems like he's not learning anything new. They just told him, dude, do your thing, do what you know, and have fun out there. And that's literally what he's. And yes, I do believe the Orlando players, defenders, were being physical with him. They knew he was the new kid. He was the new kid, and they were going to show, give him a little welcome to the MLS shove. What do you think of his performance on Saturday night?
I think it's exactly what was needed, right? If you're banking on, an 18-year-old kid that has a grand total of like 80 minutes played in MLS to win you games, you're in a bad situation. What he is going to do is he's going to make room for everybody now because it's 2 games now where his play has been incredibly dangerous and incredibly inventive. So you're going to have a left back stuck to him the entire time. And the second he gets in any position to receive the ball, the focus is going to shift to him. Now comes the project of getting him more comfortable on the ball, getting more comfortable with his teammates, and get him more comfortable being a decisive player. Because when he sees that ball, he can make it. But the thing is, now you have to kind of encourage him to actually make those plays. And that will only happen once he gets more comfortable with the people around him, right? Once he gets to build a rapport, once he gets to build a relationship with them, and then you'll get a much clearer idea of what he can bring. But as a first impression, it's hard to pick out something wrong, He did wait a bit too long to make a pass or try and take a shot. I feel like he put himself in a difficult position. But again, he draws contact and he plays through contact better than anyone would expect. Again, he's 18 years old, but he's a big kid.
He's a huge kid.
He's like 6 foot, right? Yeah. He's a big kid and he's built proper. So if people are just going to expect to come to play against Montreal and just shove him around and he's going to step back. First of all, he's 6 foot. Second of all, this kid's from the Ukraine, right? I don't think, you know,
He's
I,
fearless.
I think right now, it's tough to intimidate anybody from the Ukraine to begin
Yeah,
with, right?
yeah.
So let alone on a soccer field. So I think that he has this mentality where as he gets more comfortable with the people around him, he's going to get better and he's going to get more decisive. But again, with a small sample size, he is the only player that has looked completely comfortable the entire time he's been here.
I agree with you. I think that Sinchuk just looks comfortable. This, if we really dig deep into details, Elias, yes, 100%. There's little things that he can improve, but
Yeah,
overall, his game, the 70 minutes he played, I want to say,
ridiculous.
he was remarkable. He was literally the
Yeah.
sole focus
He was the
for
standout.
Orlando
Yeah,
because Orlando literally said, "Guys, I don't think the rest of the field is gonna do anything because Prince Owusu is not having his finishing boots today, and Caden Clark is well. Caden Clark's doing his thing. I don't even know if they were in the field at the same. Yeah, they were. He came in at halftime,
yeah, he was on for
but
about they were on
but
for about 20 minutes together.
yeah, exactly. So it just felt like they were like, well, good guys, we got to figure this new 18-year-old kid out, and then the rest of the field, well, they'll do a soft cover on them and get to them if the ball. But there wasn't nothing super crazy
No,
to do so. That's not okay. I don't say that like it's okay because I do think that the whole field should be a threat to a team, not just one player and one side, and you become a one trick pony. But moving forward, Elias, do you think the Nadal can afford to continue rotating the squad, or do you think you want to start seeing like, okay, you know what, guys, we're gonna treat it like a must-win game from here on out till the end of the season? Because unfortunately, that's just the kind of position they place themselves in. And yeah, do you want to? Is it a must-win, or do you think they can, afford to maybe just rotate a bit?
at this point, right? I mean, he said it best himself. What am I going to change, right? What besides the physical personnel on the field, right? Besides a striker that can finish and maybe a 10 that can create some more concrete chances, right? What would you change from Saturday night? What would you change from the Charlotte game, right?
Striker.
When you ask Donald, but right now Giacomo Veroni is not available.
Yeah.
Gilles Anthony Vilsain is unavailable. Sunusi looks out of shape, right? And again, we will start for 20 minutes. You can't really assess someone's fitness, but even in training, right, he's not flying all over the place. Owen Gramroche is with the U18s,
Yeah.
right? Where's the striker? Are you going to put Caden Clark striker? Right? At this point, fuck it. Put Caden Clark striker. If you're really just going to try and throw stuff at the window and see what sticks, put Caden Clark striker and put Bryce Duke behind him. Or don't play with a strike. Right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, again, if you talk about changing systems, then you're talking about changing everything because the possession, the chance creation, the build out from the back, the defense is all working. They're dominating every single facet of play. It's just the finishing. And Robbie says, yeah, it's a big besides. But it's the only thing.
Yeah.
The shape does not have anything to do with that. That's purely down to the individual. And when you have no other strikers on your team right now that are available, what am I going to do? I can't do anything.
Absolutely. Hello, Emil. Emil Kazis tells us, hello, Andy and Elias. Hello, thank you for joining us. Guys, don't hesitate to leave us comments in the chat. We're here reading them, and yeah, we're feeling a bit negative today, but we need your positivity because we love doing this, right, Elias? We do this
Absolutely. I'm having the
for
time of my life right now.
for pure life, for pure love, and yeah, and to kind of get away from the real world, isn't it? But yes, we are gonna move on. So, yeah, so we did touch a bit on it, but I talked to you about the situation that is so weird because we have, we talked about Opoku, Yankov, JMR, unused sub, in and out of there's so many pieces that just don't make sense to me. So let's talk about Tom Pierce, Elias. What is happening with Tom Pierce? He is a one-trick pony. We've said it in this show before. he does the crossing. Last week, healthy scratch. We said we really needed somebody to cross the ball. Where's Tom Pierce? He's not even in the game sheet. He went in this game. What'd you think of his performance? It's something that really I asked myself a lot.
We called him a one-trick pony. He kind of lived up. I mean, he crossed the ball.
A lot.
He definitely crossed the ball a lot. You know, in the 10, 15 minutes he was on the field, he did a lot of crossing. The problem is, right, you have Dante Sealy who's sending in a million crosses. You have Luca Petrasso that was throwing in a bunch of crosses. Even David Buga was getting involved. The problem is not the delivery. The problem is
who's at the end.
Not even who. It's just that the offense and the attackers and the person delivering the ball are so disconnected. Because if I had a nickel for every single time someone made a first post run and a second post cross, or a second post run and a first post cross, I could afford tickets to the Messi game. It happened every single time.
Yeah.
And watching this is and again, I asked Dante Sealy about this, and he's like, I just got to keep trying and keep putting more. I mean, with time, familiarity comes. I get it, but at a certain point, try something else. I beg of you, because they threw in like 30 crosses last game, especially when they went up a man. They just kept on putting crosses into the box, and it still looked disjointed. It still looked like they had just started playing with one another. So I think that right now, stop crossing the damn ball. Right? You have your wide players that have the threat, but the repetition is not the problem. The repetition is not what's going to improve your situation right now. It's the variety that will then improve your crosses, because again, crosses from 30 yards out and 40 yards out that are whipped in don't do anything.
Absolutely. Now, Elias, we do have your friend Wellington, who is with us. Hey, Emil. Hey, Wellington. He asked, Elias, do you still believe in Bryce Duke? We spent, I think, 25 minutes on Bryce Duke's ability to succeed in Montreal. You have been his advocate over the past 2 years. Yeah. Sorry, Wellington, but we did spend over 20 minutes just saying
you can go and watch that bit, because we did talk about him a decent amount.
I'm not sold on it. I'll just summarize it. I'm not sold on it. We're not sold on it. We're kind of getting tired of it. Seriously, like at this point,
especially if there's a low 10. If you play with 210s, it's a different story. If you're playing with 110, you can't afford it to have to be someone that's.
I'll tell you what, Wellington. Again, just to summarize it, I don't think I would make it such a big deal about the whole Bryce Duke if it wasn't how great of a replacement Caden Clark was for him. That's how you know how terrible of a game Bryce Duke had. Anyways, we're gonna move on. But yeah, absolutely, I do agree with you about the crosses. There's nobody really to meet at the end of him, and there's a lot of our forwards right now, Elias, that I believe are just simply not overthinking everything the moment the call comes in. Now, have the $1 million question for you, Elias. Does this squad have enough quality to win games in the MLS? That's what everybody said. Everybody, you go on social media, you post anything, you see all people are saying on X, on Blue Sky, anywhere you go, they're saying it's the quality of the players. It's the quality of the players. I just want to finish this topic of CF Montreal with that. Because we're nearing the end of the roster of the transfer window, right? So does this CF Montreal squad have enough quality to win games in the MLS?
How many is plural? I mean, like 2?
He said 2. He said 2.
No. In all seriousness, yes, this team can win games. Can this team win? Can the team right now, as it is, win enough games to make the playoffs? No. I don't think so. Can they win games? Absolutely, because you're not going to miss out on 1.5 and 2 xG every single game. That's just a statistical impossibility. Eventually, the law of averages will catch up, and Prince Owusu will score an actual goal and stuff like that. But when you look at the squad right now, and we get a large sample size of the squad now, we've got 9 games, we've got 4 games in this new system. Nothing about this indicates to me that without Giacomo Vrioni healthy and playing at least 20 games for the rest, 20 to 25 games for the rest of the season in all competitions, nothing without that makes me think this squad will even come close to the playoffs. Wellington saying I think they can win 4 games this season. That's more optimistic than my two, but I think he's more serious than I am. No, I think with Jack Morrone healthy, I think they've got like 3 wins right now, let alone 4 wins the whole season. I think that they'll be able to maybe mount the charge if he's healthy, and his enthusiasm and his maybe lack of being affected by this negative vibe that's happening to the attack right now, his freshness maybe will help with that. But something has to be changed. I'm not talking
And
about the coaching. I'm not talking about the tactics. Something on the team, a player has to be changed.
I agree with that. And look, I'm gonna be maybe a little bit more positive. You guys take this comment as you want. As you want. I don't care. I think there is talent in this team from top to bottom. Top to bottom, I think there is talent on this team. I just don't think they're the right pieces for what this club is trying to do. And I just think you have I don't even know what to call it, just a mix of things together that are trying to figure each other out, and is bringing a new piece or 2 new pieces or 3 new pieces going to fix it? Maybe. But then you have to get rid of the ones that don't fit this scheme or don't fit the club mentality. That's where I'm at with that. I just don't. I think they're talented. We talk a lot about Sunusi Ibrahim. We talk about a lot about Bryce Duke. Yes, I do think Bryce Duke is talented. Is he talented for MLS? I don't know. He's talented for somewhere else, definitely, but not here. It just doesn't fit with CF Montreal. That's when I said, again, talent is talent. Okay. Wellington asking Andy, what talents are you talking about? There is talent. You can see it. They can
Yes.
play, and they're professional
We're
soccer
not going to
players.
say he's
Okay,
untalented because that is untrue.
that is not true. They are talented, and we've seen it plenty of times that these players move on from CF Montreal, find another team, CPL, Europe, wherever they go, and they bloom, and that's fair. That's okay because it just doesn't fit, and that's just lies the kind of frustration I think that we're facing right now is that everybody is just kind of like, okay, well, we're here because they signed me a year ago or two with another mentality, another completely different formation that we're playing today, and we're just kind of trying to figure each other out, So that's just where I think signatures need to be made, but they need to get rid of the right people so that they can actually all be in the same page. Because right now it just feels like it's a squad that's not in the same page from the top to bottom. But yes, they are very talented. Elias, let's move on to something more happy, please. More positive.
Please, I beg, I beg.
Let's talk about
Anytime.
Roses FC and AFC Toronto, who had a big win, their first win of the season, of their inaugural season, the first game ever, 1-0 against AFC Toronto at BMO Field. Dude, I was I was super happy to see that game. What were your thoughts of
Okay. On-field product notwithstanding, I was so happy.
yeah,
I was so thrilled because again, and you can kind of you can we talk about this a bit in our interview with Marina Pichon, which you guys should definitely check out YouTube,
check it out.
Patreon, wherever it is. Um, but it's just the fact that we've been asking for this forever, and we've been waiting for this for about a year now, right? We've been waiting and we've been chopping at the bits, and it's finally here, and it felt like it was such a joy, and it almost didn't feel real because
Yeah.
again, we for how long we've been waiting and begging for this. So as a lover of soccer, as a lover of women's soccer, as a lover of, you know, Quebec soccer and Quebec representation in soccer, this was the highlight of my weekend. And, you
100%
know,
there.
we're going to get to the on-field stuff soon. But just off the field, the fact that, they had 14,000 people there, the fact that Bois is likely going to be sold out, the fact that, they are getting off to the right foot in terms of connecting with the soccer community, they are laying the groundwork now for this to be sustainable and successful. Now it's about delivering on the field, right? But they've done everything they have to do as a professional organization to put these teams in a position to succeed. And I'm so proud of them because this first week of launch has been a rousing success.
They were giddy. You could tell the players were giddy, the staff was giddy, the fans were giddy at the stadium. It was so fun to see from the
Mm-hmm.
national, from the start, everybody was just smiling because they were. It just seemed that they were
Yeah,
happy to be in the moment. They knew the what they were doing. They knew that this was history in the making, and they just all seemed giddy, and it was a very good vibe. But then, of course, there is still a game to play, right?
there's
There's
still a
still
game. Yeah,
there's still a game to play. It's still a soccer game, and there are good. And just like in any sport, in any league, a soccer game has its good and its bad, and that's what we do here. We're gonna go ahead and analyze and point out some of the good and some of the bad that we saw. So let's go ahead and start with the lineup that for the first ever lineup for Roses
yes,
FC. So we had a goalie. We had Karpenko. We had Whitaker on the right back. We had first of all, the first time we see this, it's a 4-3-3, right?
yeah.
Then we had and on the at center back we had Capadonna, and five at geez, I call it five. At the nose center back we had Leas. At left back we had Smith, and in midfield we had Megan Sauvé, Hez, Bibo, and we had at the forward we had Abdou, Paquin, and Boychuk. And I'm sorry if I don't know their first names, Elias. I'm not completely familiar with that yet. But what do you think when you saw this lineup? Again, first lineup ever in the history of Roses FC. What were
You
your
look
thoughts?
at some of the bigger names, people like Tanya Boychuk, people like Charlotte Debo, and I'm not too surprised. But what I'm real, and again, so obviously who wore the armband. Um, I was really excited because again, all these players come in, and I think to a certain extent, even the coaches and the staff and the club itself don't really know how it's all going to mix against another team, right? They've been training for months now. They know how they're going to blend together, but they don't know how maybe an entire team is going to operate against another team in a competitive match. And I think that a 4-3-3 lineup and the lineup itself was pretty safe. Obviously you put your best 11. That wasn't a surprise, but in terms of just the way that they lined up was a fairly safe lineup. Um, I really liked it. I think that, it wasn't a super conservative one. We kind of asked by Nipichon what the philosophy was, and they do want to play nice football. They do want to play attacking football. And, it's not they lined up in like a 4-4-2 and there's a super low block and all that stuff. So they're delivering on that. And so I can't wait to see this team get more comfortable with itself because then you will get to maybe pinpoint the end. There'll be, finer points to what their formation is, but it seemed to be a very stable. I think that's the word, is a stable starting 11. And I was happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, the way I saw it in the first few minutes, I saw an AFC Toronto team that was a little bit nervous, maybe a little bit
Hmm.
still caught up in
Yeah.
the moment. And to the complete contrary, the Roses took that chance to be like, you know what, guys, let's go full on. Let's go. Let's put the metal to the pedal. Let's freaking go because Toronto right now is looking disoriented. And that's the style that I felt like their coach Robert really push them to play, which was just
Hmm.
like let's go high press, let's pressure them, to force them to make mistakes, force them to feel a little bit pressured, and that's what led to the first goal. So that I really like to see that. I really like that style. I really like, you know if you want to call it the grinta, right? The one that they're like, let's go ahead and do the dirty work and
Hmm.
get the goal, because that's what it felt like. The goal was for Roses FC when I saw it. First of all, it came in super early, and I was surprised. I was honestly surprised how quick it came, but it really was just them capitalizing on Toronto, just maybe being a little off focus or not completely having that, which is the first game of the season again, and it's
Yeah.
it's it's, it's difficult for any team to kind of get that right away. But what did you think of that when you saw how they came out just
I think
rolling out of the
I
fence?
think this is one of the rare moments where starting your not just season, but starting your life as a club on the road was actually an advantage because they approached the game almost as if they had nothing to lose.
Yeah,
Right? They approached this game when they said, "We're on the road. We're looking to play spoiler." The nerves and all the pressure is on them because this is their first game and they're playing in front of their home crowd, right? So the fact that they have two games on the road in Toronto and Vancouver before they play in front of a home crowd, I think is almost an advantage because A, there's no expectation, and there's a game against Vancouver next week. The fact that they already have a win under their bag, if they come to Bud Boulogne with a 1-1 record, I think that's a win.
that's
I think
okay.
that's positive, right? So I think the fact that they were able to, approach this game with this almost nothing to lose attitude, and their press kind of reflect that in the early minutes, which caused the goal. It was an error, right? But it wasn't an completely unforced error, right? You lock down options, mistakes are going to happen, and the press looked well organized in those situations. And so again, Tanya Boychuk, give her a chance like that, she's going to score, right?
Yeah.
That was never a doubt. And there's a video online of them asking who was going to score the first goal in Rose's history, and like 2/3 of the team was like Boychuk. And well, there you go. So I think that, if she's a player that can really establish herself as a quote unquote star, as a quote unquote fan favorite, again, that will help with some, that'll help draw fans in and have some staying power because they go, I'm looking to see some players that I recognize. I saw them play on TV and they were really good. I want to go see them in person now. So I think all these things that you're doing on the road and doing it right is going to help when you eventually come home because A, your nerves will have settled. This will be your third game of the season, and B, you're a bit more comfortable with your football identity because you've already played two competitive matches.
Let's hope, because that's actually some we've seen before that players actually get a lot more nervous at home and they seem to lose their
Yeah,
identity. It happens. It's just sports,
especially your
right?
first game ever, right? With
Yeah,
with in a new league.
yeah.
There's a lot at stake here, and there's a lot of pressure being put on these girls.
How important was this win, do you think, for the franchise?
So important. It wasn't the cleanest win, but it was one of those they got the job done kind of wins, especially against Toronto. I don't think anyone from Montreal's ever even kind of complained about how you beat Toronto, just that you beat Toronto. Doesn't matter the sport. If Montreal beats Toronto, people are going to be happy. And I think that honestly, I look. I think it's going to take a while for them to look more comfortable with one another because you can tell that this was the first time these girls had played a competitive match with one another. There were different moments where people were slightly out of position. There were different moments where the play, both offensively and defensively, was a bit disjointed. But I don't think anyone could be surprised by the fact that, they're not a complete cohesive unit yet. This is their first game ever. So, with that being said, I think they did really well for their first game ever. Because as the game went on, you could tell they started to grow into the game together, right? The press that was kind of erratic at the start, yeah, generated a goal, but after that, they were kind of getting played through quite easily in the middle half
Yep.
of the. As the first half went on and into the second half, their press became a lot more efficient, right? And they became a lot more defensively comfortable as Toronto started throwing numbers forward, trying to get an equalizer. So I think that if just the way that they grew together in that first game, this learning process will happen quickly, right? So by the time they get to Bois de Boulogne on May 4th, they're going to be a much more cohesive unit than what you saw on Saturday.
Absolutely. And I also thought it was an incredible, like, beyond obviously the excitement of beating a Toronto team at Toronto and all that.
Mhm.
Elias, whether we like it or not, Roses FC is always going to be competing with CF Montreal.
Yeah,
I don't want to say in a bad way, but they both want to kind of like, grab the attention. Truth of the matter is that right now CF Montreal has a lot of interest from a lot of people, but they're very disappointed because
mhm.
of how they're performing and
Yeah,
what
of
they're bringing
course.
to the field. So right now, more than ever, is the perfect moment for Roses FC to jump and be like, "Hey guys, we're winning games. We're here. We're giving you a nice game to watch. So come by here." So it's almost a perfect moment for them. So I think it was extremely important, and hopefully, like you said, they can go to Vancouver, get that win, and bring that hype of being, look, we just won our first two games of the season, and we're playing beautiful football. Come see us and sell out the stadium, because you never know what's going to happen when you go to Saputo Stadium. At least with us, you have more of a guarantee to see a better show. Anyways, I'm just trying to be as real as possible as to how.
No, but you're right because, and again, I was looking for it because Max Truman tweeted it yesterday. The average minute per
Yes,
minute viewership for the Roses
was more.
on LDS was 57,000 and that was at 4 o'clock on Saturday. Prime time, CF Montreal, 50,000.
Yeah,
Or again, that's not counting the Apple TV numbers, just on RDS, but that is still noticeable. That's still nowhere. That's people flicking through their TV on a random Saturday night, they're picking the Roses. They didn't necessarily
Over.
pick CF
Yeah,
Montreal,
exactly.
right? Um, I think that's important to notice because again, yeah, it was the first game ever, so obviously you're going to draw in some people, but they've done enough now that I think that they can keep maybe not necessarily this, but they can keep this number going, and they say, okay, come back, and then if they have a good result in Vancouver, then it's a home opener. You're going to want to come to that, right? So this is how you build sustainability. It's by being consistent, and so I think they've done absolutely everything now that we can talk about on the field, both on the field and off it, to warrant more and more people coming back and then also drawing in new people. I think they're doing a phenomenal job.
Yeah, absolutely. Roberto, always with the positivity. Says first game. Let's see game 10.
Well,
Roberto,
look,
we love
Robbie,
you.
they're already if you put them in the standings with CF Montreal, they're ahead of CF Montreal because of goal differential and win total. So you know what? I agree with you. Let's see game 10. Let's see how when all the teams are comfortable with one another. But I think it's a good start, and I think that it's a very promising start given the way that they evolve together throughout the game.
Absolutely. And how'd you like Robert Rositoyo's debut as a maybe I said his name wrong. Debut as a coach for the club. Like, how did you like his debut?
I've seen him at McGill for a while. I know his chops. He's a
Okay.
very smart man. I got the chance to interview him when he was on Can FC. He's a very smart coach, just in terms of pure X's and O's and pure. He knows what he's talking about. Seems like a really nice guy. Again, I haven't met him in the locker room. I don't know what kind of man manager style he has. But when it comes to setting up a team properly, right? He helped McGill get to a very high level and a national standing as an organization when they were, you know, not doing so great. The women's program was not doing great. And he kind of took them up to the level of UDM, UCAM, all these people in Quebec, and then also to national recognition. He knows what he's doing and he's intimately familiar with Quebec women's soccer because again, when you run the McGill soccer program, you're constantly recruiting, you're constantly looking for what's out there in Quebec soccer. And so he is a very well positioned. There's a reason they went out and they got him, and he's very well positioned to help this team grow and not just succeed now, but plant the seeds to make a sustainable future, right? So I think that I think he. I mean, obviously, he got to win on the first one. He set up a very well organized team, and hopefully, just keeps on improving because
Do
I
you think
think
he
he deserves
adapted?
to
Do
have.
you think he adapted well as the game went on? Because I felt like the team, as much as I love the victory, we talked very positive about Roses FC so far, but
Yeah,
I want to say that there were moments I felt as the game went on that they kind of slowed down. They kind of backed off. Which is fair enough
yeah,
because they're playing away, so you want to maybe park the bus really soon. But you kind of saw that Toronto, once they started picking up a little bit more confidence, a
yeah.
little bit they settled in a little bit more. All of a sudden, Roses FC was like, "Oh, okay, whoa, whoa, whoa!" Like they were taking it back, and that's what I saw. Do you think this is a coaching thing? What do you think of this I guess transition into the later phases of the game?
I think this is also a nerves thing. I think you're right. This is your first game. You've got the lead. You're like, oh shit, okay, let's see it through now. But I think also, as a coach, he's human. He's not immune to emotions and nerves. I think he also was like, okay, guys, let's just make sure that we don't blow this, right?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think maybe some adjustments could have helped, but also, you don't want to rock the boat too much. I agree with you because I think about the halfway point, or maybe towards the end of the first half, even it was very clear that exploiting that left hand side with pace was a problem, and I would have liked to see maybe a bit more of an adjustment for him, maybe either to reinforce the left side or maybe make some kind of change towards the hour mark to include some pace on that side, but didn't really get that until the later stage of the game. But yeah, that 40 minutes to an hour was kind of difficult. um, but I think again, the group saw it out well. Wasn't super flashy. Obviously, a one thing win with a second minute goal is never going to be flashy, but they got it, and they showed some really good moments along the way. Some not so good moments as well, right? Because again, this is the first time they've ever played together competitively. But I saw some things I really liked as well. Some really cool movements.
Absolutely. Yeah, same here. Like there were some very exciting things. Um Was there anyone in particular that disappointed you? Because I know I can tell you that from my end, one I really liked everything they played, but there was Abdul that I
Mhm.
saw, especially again, it might be fatigue as the Latif Abdul. It might be fatigue because as the game goes on, first game, you might be getting caught up. Um, I saw her get miss out on a lot of passes, and I was kind of disappointed because there was almost a lack of effort as the game went on. Elias, I'm ready to say it was fatigue. It was the first game. But as Robbie said, game 10, if we're still seeing this kind of, lack of hustle as the game goes
Yeah,
on, is this something to be concerned about with the first game, or you really want to give them a break? Because it's the first game, Elias. We can only talk about so much, right? We talked about it
yeah,
before the show, how hard it is to really like come out with much to do on the first game. Give us 5 games, then we really can have before and afters. But yeah, go
yeah.
ahead, sir.
No, I agree with you, right? I think it's the reason why she was the first sub. I don't think she had the best outing. I think there were definitely moments where you saw her play and you're like, okay, I see it. I understand this why she got her starting spot. But yeah, you're a professional club and you need someone that's going to put you in the best position to win, not just over a couple movements, but over the course of the entire match. So I wouldn't be surprised if, there was some squad rotation because again, they're still learning what works.
Yeah.
And if Latifa Abdul is one of the players that gets rotated, and maybe, you look at her as until things are more so, maybe she's a super sub, or maybe she's, you operating against a certain type of opponent. I wouldn't be surprised if the lineup got switched up a little bit. Again, you are in a learning process. But yeah, I think she had a couple mistakes here and there.
Was that the player that disappointed you, as the same as me, or was there somebody
The
else that?
most, I don't know about the most, but you know,
It's hard.
I
It's
don't
only
think
the
I,
first game.
I don't think because again, I think every single time I saw something, I kind of had it in my head of the caveat as I tried to see through the lens of this is their first game together, right? I think yeah, there were some individual technical errors from everybody across the field, right? But
Yeah,
that happens. And maybe it's also has to do with nerves. That
especially
also
the
has to do with.
goalie. The goalie was really high, and
I
really.
loved that.
You like that?
I
It scared the crap out
loved
of me. I
that.
was like,
He
"What?"
was wild, and I
It was
loved it.
crazy. That's
Oh my god, yes.
okay
But
when you're winning
Anna,
1-0, but if you're down 5-0 and you're seeing that, Elias, you're gonna be like, "Dude, get her out of the game!" Like, what the fuck is she doing?
no, Anna Karpenko was uh she got me out of my seat a couple times. It was very nerve wracking, but also I don't know. I love me a goalie that's got a wild side, but also backs it up. I
Without
love
some
an
bad
Ederson.
decisions,
I
though.
love. I mean, the keeper for Barcelona right now is Wojtek Szczesny, right? He's a psychopath. I love a keeper that's got a little bit of a screw loose when it comes to like, yeah, I'll leave my line. I don't give a shit. I love that. I love that, especially when it doesn't cost them the game.
Yeah.
Phenomenal, right?
Yeah, let's repeat that again, especially when it doesn't cause them. Because if it
Oh yeah,
does,
well if you're
Elias,
gonna do that and you're gonna mess up, then obviously I don't want to see that. But those goalies that are coming out and they leave the coach like watching through their fingers, going, "What are you doing? I'm going to like." Yeah, that's again. Football is about entertainment, even for the goalies. You gotta. Right, the Barcelona game
it's
today
not
against Mallorca. The
okay.
Barcelona game against Mallorca today, the goalie did a Cruyff turn and dropped Pedri on his ass. I wasn't happy, but that was entertaining as hell. He was alone. I did a Cruyff turn in front of a player. That's awesome. And so, yeah, Anna Karpenko, chapeau. That was it was stressful, but that was a very entertaining first match. So,
Okay, so look, I was gonna ask you: is there anybody that surprised you? Are you gonna go with the goalie? Are you gonna go with the?
100%, a hundred
Okay,
percent.
all right, fair
Yeah,
enough.
that was yeah. That I audibly reacted several times, like
Fucking
"Ah!"
hell! So, what do you want to see the next game? What are some of the things that you might want to look
I
out
want to
for?
see a more cohesive press, but for 90 minutes. Because again, as the game went on, they kind of found their repère a lot easier, but there were moments where it dropped off, right? And so that's what I want to see next. I want to see everybody on the same page for the entire time because they got played through organically when the press was good and the breakout and the build out from the back, which is better. That happens. That's football. But there were sometimes they got played through, and that's because people were not picking up assignments. And this was all over the field. There's no one in particular, right? It was
Fatigue, man.
the
Fatigue.
fullbacks were not stepping properly. The wingers were not closing down properly. Even the midfield, right? Charlotte Bibo is not a spring chicken, so sometimes she was a step behind, right? On the ball, she's excellent. I love Charlotte Bibo. That's not going to change. But there are certain things that have to be accounted for. So I'm hoping to see, as you know, you have one game as a frame of reference, this press and this movement as a unit is more cohesive.
Yeah, I just want to see consistency, man. Like
Yeah.
I like the Charlotte Bibo's game, as you said. She showed her experience. She
Yeah.
showed how
She's
she
one of the only
seems
people
to
that
be.
wasn't smiling when they came out of the tunnel. She was just like, "Yeah, it's another Tuesday, bro. I don't care."
She was
She was locked in, man.
vocal in the
Yeah.
field, and she was very, she clearly had her hand. But just like all her other teammates, she seemed exhausted by the 80th minute because it's the first game, and you just see both teams, Toronto, especially Toronto, that's has to exert more since they want to score that goal. It was pretty like hard to see at the end. Both of them
Mhm.
exhausted, just looking at the minutes and seconds pass by. Now it's very early in the season. We did this with CF Montreal, very early in the season, and a very long way to go. But what's a bold prediction that you have for Roses FC based on just one game? And we're gonna
Bold
laugh at this
prediction.
when we look back. Yeah,
Um, I don't have a okay. Hold on.
it could be literally
Bold
anything.
prediction.
Lies. I'll give you one. I'll tell you my bold
Okay, go
prediction. Okay,
nuts.
so
I'll go off of you. I'll
I
go off
say
of you.
Tanya Boychuk is gonna be the leading scorer of the league and
Mm,
MVP of the league at the end of the season. That's the level of talent I think she has for this team.
okay. Um, Mine is. I think. Do I think that?
That's the clip.
Okay, I'm gonna say it. Fuck it. I think Ali Hess is gonna get a national team call up. That's what
I
I.
like that. Perfect.
I think she wasn't my most surprising because again, she's played in Europe, she's played at the NSL, she's played at a high level. I was very happy with her game because she was that engine in the midfield. I was very happy with how she played. I think she gets along very well with Megan Sophie and Charlotte Bibo. I think that midfield three, once they get together on the same page and they develop some chemistry, will be very potent. So my prediction is that she gets a national team call up.
And that's something that we talked about also with Pichon. Marina Pichon was the importance of Roses FC with the women's Canada women's national team, right?
Yeah.
And definitely something that we're gonna have to keep an eye on. Which lead us to the last portion of the show. Thank y'all for holding on so long. So I believe it was today that they announced that the
Today,
Canada
this
women's
afternoon.
national team is going to be visiting Stade Saputo versus Haiti on June 3rd. What are your thoughts?
Long overdue. I mean, they were here like a year, like less than a year ago, but long overdue. I'm so happy they're back. It was so much fun. The game against Brazil. It was a good time. I went there with some friends of mine. They hadn't really been. I mean, one of my friends is an avid soccer supporter. He knows all about the women's national team. But two of my other friends are not that big into soccer. They went there. They had an amazing time. They're like, I'm a soccer fan now. I'm like, that's what it's all about, man.
Let's go,
That's
baby.
what it's all about. We also got a question about Louis, which is again one of the reasons I would love to see IHC play. Unfortunately, I will not be in the country on June 3rd, but Merci Dumornay is one of, if not the most informed player in the world right now. She's killing it for Lyon. She scored in the Champions League semifinal. She is she's Haitian. She plays for the Haitian national team. I would love to see her because again, this is a world-class talent. And I don't know if you've seen her play for Lyon. She is a firecracker. She's so much fun to watch, and she
Love
is
it.
so good. Oh,
Love it. Absolutely. And let's talk a little bit like what is the importance of this kind of game, of the Canada women's national team in continuing the momentum of Roses FC. I know we touched on Roses FC, but the momentum of Roses FC inaugural season. Do you think there's a true link between the two, between bringing the Canada women's national team here and the inaugural season of Roses FC, and how it seems like Canada, the federation, is really pushing for women's soccer to grow in the country? How important do you think it is that they do this?
I think it's super important. I'm super happy that this is happening soon. This is happening fast that they're finally getting games again on Canadian soil. Because remember, the men's national team just had they had Copa America, they had the Nations League, they're gonna have the Gold Cup in the summer, but the women still have a ways to go before their next competitive tournament. And so this is a great way to keep Canadian soccer fever present for women's soccer in this long stretch without competition. Because again, remember, interest for soccer in general, not just women's soccer, but interest for the national team in general peaks when there's a competition, right? There's a friendly, people are not soccer is still not the number one sport, right? So when it's just an international friendly, it's whatever. But when it comes to your city, it's a lot more present. You've got the marketing, you've got the advertisement, you've got the game day atmosphere. If they're playing overseas every game, you don't feel as connected to your national team. So games on home soil are so important. You saw the buzz that was generated from the national team announcing that they were going to have 2 games in
Oh,
Montreal, and
insane.
they were months in advance. They announced, and everyone was like, "Let's fucking go!"
Let's
Yeah,
go.
that's what happens, right? Same thing. They announced it a month and a half in advance. Let's fucking go.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
just because you're gonna have a world class talent like Monsieur Dumoulin coming here, but because again, this national team is one of the best national teams in the world. I want to see them live. I want to go to these games because they're that good.
Absolutely. And, you know, at the end of the day, I still, and this is the last question for you here, Liza. The Federation seems to be prioritizing booking more games in Montreal. What kind of message does that send for investors around the country? Because they do need it. What are these hand gestures that I'm seeing? But
The
no,
best soccer city in the country.
that's what's up. That's what's up. Yeah, but we talk about hype, we talk about momentum,
Yeah,
but they're also looking for investors. They're looking for people to invest in them, right? Because to
yeah.
believe in their product. How important do you think it is that the federation is prioritizing bringing soccer to whether men's or women's soccer to Stade Saputo, to Montreal?
I think they recognize just how big of a soccer city Montreal is. I think they recognize,
Huge.
right? Look, whether or not CF Montreal are doing well, right? CF Montreal right now that is piss poor and has not won a game in nine games and is, you know, one goal differential away from being last in the standings. They're still drawing 14,000 people
That's
in
the truth.
April when it's raining and crummy outside, right? They're still drawing 14,000, 50,000 people to the stadium. There is a significant soccer fan base here. So, of course, they should be, the game, every game shouldn't be at BMO Field. Every game should not be, oh, we're going to go to Toronto or Vancouver and then everyone else can, either go there or get lost. No, no, no. You have to develop other soccer cities, especially when there are loyal fan bases in smaller venues. Go to Wanderers Ground, go to the CPL stadiums, because there you will also, again, help grow the sport. They've done
Yeah.
a phenomenal job in making a commitment to grassroots soccer, but you have to keep doing that. You can't just go like we did that really well before the World Cup last time. We're good. No, you have to keep doing that. You have it's a never ending effort.
Consistency, absolutely. It's just
Absolutely,
like
man.
anything you do, right? You just got to be consistent with your product. um but we always have our wonderful Robbie that he's not sure he agrees with
What do you,
you.
I said a lot, Robbie. What do you not agree about? What do you not agree
I
about?
think the importance of the investors and all that. But besides that, we're gonna go ahead and say a big thank you to all of you guys who joined us today, because we really hope you enjoyed tonight's show. As always, the podcast will always be free to listen and watch on all of our platforms. Make sure to check out our Patreon page for exclusive member content and all of our social media platform for more content. Big shout out to all of you who joined the Patreon this week, and thank you again for to all of you who tuned in tonight. And see you next week for episode 224 of The Ball is Round.